In the early afternoon of October 17, 1952, according to one of the many witnesses, High School Superintendent Jean-Vice Prigent, there appeared a cottony cloud of strange shape. Above it, a narrow cylinder, apparently inclined at a 45-degree angle, was slowly moving in a straight line towards the southwest. A sort of plume of white smoke was escaping from its upper end. In front of this cylinder were 30 smaller objects that appeared to be red spheres, each surrounded by a yellow ring. Prigent said they moved in a rapid and short zigzag formation. When two saucers drew away from one another, a whitish streak, like an electrical arc, was produced between them. During this event, a white, hair-like substance rained down from all of the objects, wrapping itself around telephone wires and tree branches, while also covering the rooftops of many houses. When observers picked up the material and rolled it into a ball, it became a gelatin-like substance and then dissipated. One man, who had observed the episode from a bridge, claimed the material fell on him, and he was able to extract himself from it only by cutting his way clear, at which point the material collected itself and ascended. A nearly identical series of events occurred in Gaillac, France, 10 days later. That event took place in Oloron, France in 1952, but it is far from the only example of this angel hair-like substance showing up after a mass sighting of a UFO. This material is often described as being sticky, fibrous, having a resemblance to cobwebs with the consistency of jelly. In this video, we will be taking a look at multiple different cases of this material appearing around mass UFO sightings. And at the end, we will take a look at some of the explanations of what this could be. In some of these cases, it does turn out to be spider webs of migrating spiders, particularly in cases occurring in Australia and New Zealand. However, these following cases are a lot harder to explain. We find the first appearance of angel hair occurred during the famous celestial phenomenon over Nuremberg in 1561. During this event, many men and women of Nuremberg saw what a local newspaper at the time describes as an aerial battle out of the sun, followed by the appearance of a large black triangular object and exhausted combatant spheres falling to Earth in clouds of smoke. Witnesses observed hundreds of spheres, cylinders, and other odd-shaped objects that moved erratically overhead. The aforementioned clouds of smoke were found to contain this angel hair-like material. This phenomenon has been interpreted by some, like UFO researcher John Keel, as an aerial battle of extraterrestrial origin. On November 2nd, 1959, Professor Amaral, a biologist and headmaster of a local college in Évora, Portugal, was grading papers in his office when he was interrupted by a couple of his students. The young men were going on and on about a strange airplane that they had seen overhead and dragged the professor outside to have a look. Once there, the professor witnessed a small, gray-blue glowing object flying far up above in a pattern unlike any bird or airplane he had ever seen. He rushed back to his office and pointed his telescope at the object. It looked unlike any natural atmospheric phenomenon he had ever seen. Professor Amaral described the object as seamless, elliptic, and perhaps the size of a commercial jetliner, except it had no wings, no windows, and no visible propellers. Sometimes it would hover in place, then move southwest at a speed that defied the laws of physics. Minutes later, a second flying object popped up out of nowhere. It was similar to the first, except much larger. In his report, Amaral would describe it as colossal. The two objects moved around each other with a motion that resembled two jellyfish. After a short while, the objects ascended until they were completely out of view. After the crafts had disappeared, Professor Amaral stood outside with his hands outstretched to catch these strange filaments that were now falling from the sky. When these filaments made contact with his or anybody else's skin, they would quickly disappear. The substance looked similar to spider webs, except there were tons of them. So many, they quickly began to form clumps on the ground. Among them, not a single spider was found. The professor then became inundated with phone calls from people around town and beyond that spotted the flying objects and wanted his opinion on them. The professor wisely grabbed a petri dish and collected some of the material to be examined. In town, the phenomenon was quickly dubbed angel hair due to its uncanny resemblance with very fine, white hair. It was described as sticky, and the clumps melted into a light clear or yellowish slime. The angel hair rain lasted a total of 4 hours. By the time it was over, there was so much of it, the red clay roofs were snow white. Professor Amaral would then work with his friend and colleague, Professor Silva, a brilliant physicist and astronomer, to uncover the mystery of this angel hair. Silva had been informed of the event through his son, a pilot who had been 100 kilometers northwest of Evora, but found an excessive amount of the substance on his freshly cleaned plane. Amaral reported his initial findings to Silva, saying he could be entirely wrong, but it was unlike anything he had ever seen. He extracted a sample of the substance from the petri dish onto the slides, and after magnifying it about 120 times, he could see a tiny organism about 1 millimeter wide with a seemingly unicellular central core. When pushed between the slides, 10 slime-covered tentacles emerged from the core. It expanded and moved. The slime itself was a clear yellowish color, while the limbs were darker. The organism reacted to stimuli and was unlike anything the two seasoned scientists had ever seen. It appeared to be alive. Samples were sent to the University of Biological Sciences in Lisbon, and under their much more powerful microscope lenses, the unknown filaments exposed some of their secrets. The central body was egg white, while the tentacles were bright red. When under stress, it exhibited what they described as intense defensive reactions akin to that of an animal's. They said this because its reflexes were too swift and intuitive for a plant. The tentacles appeared to emerge from the body when the thing tried to break free, showing impressive strength and endurance for its size. Its strength was so much that it could slightly lift the microscopic slides as if it feared being crushed. The body itself was able to withstand pressures of up to 350 grams, and after which it would change colors from bright yellow to a dark brown. Then it would presumably die. Many scientific experts were shown the slides, and the consensus was that what was being observed was indeed some sort of being, but were unable to determine exactly what that being was. After about 2 years, the preserved samples showed disintegration of the tentacles from the body and a progressive fraying of the structure. The substance's spectrometry showed that it contained sodium, carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, tin, boron, silicon, calcium, and magnesium. Professor Amaral was never taken seriously for his findings, as in Portugal at that time, UFOs were not taken very seriously, and as a fairly religious country, many people considered it to be sacrilegious to discuss such topics. Until his death in the 1990s, the professor would compile research of the phenomenon and noted that the vast majority of these cases were preceded by sightings of UFOs. Tragically, in 1978, the University of Lisbon's labs burnt down in a massive fire, and the original samples were lost. In 1960, an independent group of researchers contacted Professor Amaral to conduct their own research into the topic. This sample that they received, however, and this group itself remains a mystery, and the sample has seemingly vanished. Angel hair was also reported during the miracle at Fatima in Portugal on October 13, 1917. 3 children had made a prophecy that the Virgin Mary, referred to as Our Lady of Fatima, would appear and perform miracles on that date. Newspapers published testimony from witnesses who said that they had seen extraordinary solar activity, such as the sun appearing to dance or zigzag in the sky, careen towards the earth, or emit multicolored light and radiant colors. According to these reports, the event lasted approximately 10 minutes. The angel hair phenomenon also exists in New Zealand and Australia, as local newspapers have reported many sightings since the 1950s. Although, because both of these places are infested with spiders, many of these have been identified as spiderwebs after analysis. The same phenomenon was also observed in 1898 in Montgomery, Alabama in the United States, and yet again in 1954 in St. Mark's Square in Venice, Italy. Now, with those stories in mind, let's take a look at some of the possible explanations for this phenomenon. Some types of spiders are known to migrate through the air, sometimes in large numbers on cobweb gliders. Many cases of angel hair were found to be these spider threads, and in one occasion, small spiders have been found in the material. In the aforementioned case in Évora, Portugal, the scientists at the University of Lisbon did come to a conclusion that they believed the angel hair was produced by a small insect of an unknown species. They also believed that it could just be some sort of single-celled organism like we talked about earlier. However, on October 13th, 1917, and on October 17th, 1957, samples were taken from Cova da Iara in Portugal and examined at the same lab in Lisbon, and those samples were found to be vegetable products and not animals. So a very similar sample was found in one case to be the production of a small insect, while in the other case it was said to be a vegetable product. Finally, for the more grounded explanations, atmospheric electricity may cause floating dust particles to become polarized, and the attraction between these polarized dust particles may cause them to join together to form long filaments. But with those explanations out of the way, let's take a look at the ones believed to be connected to the UFO phenomenon. Some of these explanations are ionizing air maybe sleeting off the electromagnetic field that surrounds a UFO, or that excess energy is converted into matter. It is also believed that the usage by UFOs of a gravity field would cause heavy atoms in ordinary air to react among themselves and produce a kind of precipitate that falls to the ground and disappears as the ionization decreases. So while all of these theories do have some merit, none of them can quite explain the appearance of these unidentified flying objects that seem to correlate with the production of this angel hair material. Through my research, I did find that all of these cases do appear to happen around the fall, in October, November, around the same time of year, and a lot of these cases, as you might have put together, have occurred in Portugal. So I do think that a reasonable explanation could be the explanation of the University of Lisbon, where they do believe that it is some insect producing this material. However, you would think that they would be able to identify this insect if it was able to produce this much material at one time of the year. But with that said, that's all that I have for you guys today. Thank you for watching the video. I'm working on the iceberg video. I want to make shorter videos like this in between about some interesting stuff that I'm finding out there. The iceberg video should be up next week. Let me know what you thought of this one. Let me know what I can improve, do better. But with that said, thank you for watching. See you all next time.